Tobago. Welcome to another edition of Scoreboard here on ACTN. It's always a pleasure every Tuesday evening to come into your home where we talk sports. Before I introduce my guest for tonight, first of all, I just want to say a big shout out to Mr. Holder from Nelson Street. He is a viewer that views this program every single night, and he always calls to give us feedback and things like that. And he's also close to my good buddies, Dennis Allen and Mr. Gill, Christopher Gill. You know, the two guys who's been on Scoreboard that has caused all the chaos, right? Also to my fans in Point Forty. I never knew that, you know, it's only when you move about, I never knew that I had so many people from the Point Forty area who've used this program. And again, I say thank you very much, because without you, we have no program. My guest for tonight, we're going to be talking, well, it's a mix there. It's motivational, cycling, artists. It's a program with a difference. He's a former cyclist, a businessman, sports promoter, motivational speaker, artist. He is from St. James. Actually, I think that is where he was born, in St. James. Stand to be corrected. Top 10 World Cup placings in cycling, 3 CSC medals, 9 national 1 kilometer time trial titles, and 2 national junior records still to be broken. That's an achievement by itself. At art exhibition from 1994 to 2018, former executive member of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee and a former chairman of the sports company of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me welcome to you, Michael Phillips. Mike, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. Only one correction is the junior records have been broken.
It has been broken?
Yeah. So that's great news.
Okay, right.
That's excellent
But
news.
records are meant to be broken.
Yes, exactly.
And let me thank you for coming down and sharing this time with us here. I know that sometimes, you know, we have our sportsmen and women, they go through their career, they retire, and then the younger people doesn't hear anything about them. They forget about them. And that's why I always like to get the former sportsmen and women to come and tell their stories, because in every story there is something to help a young person.
Agreed.
Now, was I wrong when I said you were born in St. James?
Well, I grew up most of my life in St. James.
In St. James.
Yeah, between St. James and Woodbrook.
And Woodbrook, right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I'll have sufficient time, because after viewing your bio, it's like a 3-part series. But nevertheless, you started a career in cycling. How did it start for you? Who was that motivational factor that drove you to the sport? Well,
I come from a cycling family, pretty much like the Dickies and so on, and several other families that you find that there's quite a lot of examples of second generation success, like Tony Sellier and his son Christopher Sellier, who would have won medals at Pan Am Championships. So that was the example for me. My grandfather was a president of the Cycling Federation. I eventually became a president of the Cycling Federation as well. Right. My father served on the executive, so my father raced for Trinidad and Tobago in the days of Gibbon.
Right, that's what Leslie King and those guys.
Yes, correct. So he would have done some of the teams and tours that would have gone to Barbados and Guyana and so on. So for me, there was no doubt in my mind what I wanted to do when I was big enough.
Because I guess you would have been trailing behind them,
correct,
you know, and seeing.
Correct. And my mother also was a major support and encourager with regards to cycling and the other aspects of the things that I do. So my art and everything else that came about afterwards. So I think some of the things that I remember from early cycling, of course, the name Gene Samuel. So Gene would have been racing at the 84 Olympics when I would have been probably like about 10 or 12 years old or something like that. I remember my cousin and I saying that, you know, we could train and go to some of these major events. And so that was an inspiration. Of course, when it came to names and legends, of course, Leslie King and Ian Attley and so on, but Roger Gibbon particularly stood out as far as how, from an early age, I recognized how people said his name. And it was always with this level of reverence.
Yes. And well, to be honest, Gibbon was really that you know, someone in a sport always stands out
Right.
even long after they have been retired. And I think that's one name that
Correct.
you have to bridge with cycling.
Correct. And I think it's not just because he was a cyclist, because he also was probably one of our very first personalities as far as exuding that charisma and so on, and that likability and that fan support. So those are so many things that I looked at and tried to emulate.
When was the first time you wore the national colors?
National colors, I think it was age 17, when I would have ridden for the Easter Grand Prix and Southern Games and so on. I had the opportunity at a little bit earlier, but my coaches at that point in time thought that it's too premature, because I was 16 at the time, and I was invited to ride in these events at a race called Latin Fire in the Oval, and I was getting on the podium for each race that they invited me to. But what that meant is if I wore the colors, I would not have been able to go and ride any of the junior events afterwards.
Oh.
Yeah, and they thought, you know, there's no way they should have cut short my youth, my cycling youth, so to speak, to go ahead in that particular way and then be potentially exhausted. Because, you know, I may have just been having a great weekend that weekend, but you never know. So, yes, it was 17, and I really enjoyed being on that team, because I had the opportunity to be on the team with Gene Samuel, Maxwell Cheeseman, Dexter Trotman, Roger Farrell, were some of the riders that were on the team with me that year, and I really, really, you know, relished, you know, that.
And from there you went on to the seniors.
Yes, yeah.
Let's talk a bit about your triumphs, you know, abroad, you know, when you traveled. Well,
I would categorize myself in a very modest way of having a decent career. However, when you look at some of the other names that I called, particularly Gene and Roger Gibbon and so on, Leslie King, they were far more decorated. I really enjoyed my time as a cyclist. I mean, being able to be in the top 10 at the World Cup level at 10 times and have a Pan Am medal and CAC Games medals and so on is great. But I think for me, my satisfaction came from the fact that I was learning so much when I was traveling. I always knew that I wanted to do something else other than racing. So I was a little bit preoccupied, if you want to call it, by looking. When I went to the event, I wasn't just looking at the cyclists. I was looking at how things were set up.
To see.
Yeah, I was looking how things were set up, how the announcers, where were the announcers, and I, you know, I just instinctively, as I was just looking at the entire environment, how people were motivated to come into the gates and so on. So it was really a great learning experience. Not only that, I really enjoyed it from the perspective of all the people that I met, the ability to learn so many things, because I believe that you can't really grow unless you develop relationships with people. And you can't do anything and can't achieve anything in life unless you learn to cooperate and depend on other people. So those were some of my greatest experiences. In addition to that, it allowed me, with every hotel that I went to, every house that I went to abroad that had a painting on a wall, that I was able to look at the painting and try and assess, how did the artist do this? How did they use those colors? See these different styles? Because at that point in time, in the early 90s, the internet wasn't really available in everybody's house, you know, houses and so on, to have access to seeing all of this images. You had to actually go out there, as opposed to being able to be right in the palm of your hand as it is today. So I think those things gave me a real advantage.
Now, when you look back at your career, I mean, 15 years is a very long time, right? What kept you going? Because I'm sure that in that 15 years, there were challenges that you faced, you know, there were obstacles, because we know in life, nothing happens and goes easy. There's always little things in there to challenge you, to push you, you know, further. What kept you for that 15 years?
I enjoyed what I did. For everything I just explained to you, I think those were the things that really were the little rewards along the way. The question is really what made me stop at 15 years. And what made me stop at 15 years is because the sport was practically dead at that point in time. And what I realized is, even though we had more medals within that decade and more records broken, and for a long period of time, because you would have had several athletes winning medals at international competition, the sport was declining. Why was it declining? When you looked at it, it was the events were declining because they weren't being run as effectively, because the demand for what an event was and what people saw, seeing now cable television and so on coming, and people looking and seeing how international events are hosted. When we didn't start stepping up to that level, people felt, well, okay, it's a substandard type of activity.
Okay.
And then I really noticed that if you don't have great events, then you don't have a sport, because the events is really the catalyst for everything else. All of the spending, the economy of sport, really the catalyst is the event. Just like every national or international governing body's hallmark event, the World Cup for any sport, the Olympics, those things, they inspire or trigger so much revenue or spending and so on, and facilities, catering, travel, all of those things. Without that, you don't have coaches. What would you be training for? Because an event is really a particular date that you hope to be at your best for, and along the way you are trying to get better to even just be able to qualify. And there's that whole level of progression that comes out of that motivational factor that events provide. Apart from that, there's that emulation factor where people see an athlete and, okay, they know they're not going to be able to dunk or whatever it is, but they're going to try.
Yes.
They're not going to end up on an NBA team, but they want to be able to do that little move. And all of those things, anything that you can have that inspires people to do something that utilizes their body in a positive manner is what we need to project. So all of those things, realizing that the sport was coming to an end or dying, I went to, I'd already promoted my first event at age 24.
Okay.
And at age 28, that's when the collapse really took place. And I went to Jerry Hadid, who had sponsored one of the earlier events. And I did a series of events at King George V Park. And he called me one morning, earlier morning, and I thought, well, the phone call was very short. Michael, come into my office. I want to see you. I was like, okay, what did I do wrong? So what had actually happened, he had seen the coverage of the event that I'd hosted,
okay,
right? That he wasn't even aware that was happening, because his company, his people, his staff were the ones that really moved forward. And he was like, wow, this is excellent. Look at all those kids. Look at all those people that have come out. And he called me and he said, listen, think big and come back to me. And that's where West Indies versus the World was born. And from that, at age 28, I put on 10 days of international competition, including all of the build-up events, with the support of Beacon and several other companies. Yeah. So when I did that, imagine at that age, a lot of people thought I was crazy. It's like, nah, no way this is going to happen. And there were a lot of things I think just as a matter of divine intervention that I was able to pull it off. Things that happened that it just couldn't be a coincidence. And from there, I've been involved in the sport in many other ways. And then you realize the challenges in just lending your talents and so on to help. There's resistance in that. And that was a really educational time for me to now start to learn and study human behavior, and then to look for patterns and now make decisions more so based on those patterns. Yes, you can still get blindsided. However, at least it gives you an indication of what to expect. Yeah. And you navigate accordingly, and you adjust your behavior accordingly as far as how you approach people, and understanding what are the things that make them tick, and how do you come across as not threatening as far as people having their own domain and their own space. So I have no regrets about stopping at that age, because I always thought I would have gone to about maybe age 30. And, and when you look at somebody like a Gene Samuel, who would have raced up until 36, he would have been racing until. I just thought it was far more worthwhile to go that way, use the skills that I acquired and developed at that time, because it made no sense trying to be the king of an anthill. If you have no competition, you have nothing.
Yeah.
And what about everybody else who's now who hung up their bikes and feel demotivated? And I get far more pleasure from that than any other medal that I would have won. Those activities.
So you have no regrets?
None.
Right? But is there any one thing that you felt that, oh boy, I would have really liked to achieve that in the 15-year span as a cyclist?
I would say yes. I didn't qualify for the Olympics. And I will tell you, it was one of the things that spurred me on to start doing the events, because the system for qualification had changed and it was far more expensive. You had to go to all these World Cups. And I was probably one of 2 people in the Western Hemisphere to qualify for the World Championships. But the catch was, when you got there, you had to be in the top 4 in the world, or you had to be in the top 8 teams. And I didn't have a team, it was just me.
Okay.
So I knew the odds were against me and so on. And I actually left the stadium that day in tears. And I thought to myself, you know what? There are other people who are behind me or who may think about wanting to get in this sport. And it can't be that is going to be so difficult. Something has to happen that people are encouraged to continue the sport. And that for me was probably the blessing, that push, not qualifying and feeling the hurt of that and understanding that I can do something about it. I could do something about the next person. And I thought that it would have taken 10 years to see the next champions come, and it was shorter than that. It was something like 6 before we started winning gold medals at the Pan Am Championships, just because the events were there and people the first international event that I had, and the Keep Fits, the guys came to the track with cobweb on their bikes. I actually saw people cleaning cobweb off of their bikes. They couldn't believe there was going to be racing. And those memories are etched in my mind, because we need to understand that you can make a difference in whatever way. Yeah. Don't sit back. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. You jump in. That's one of the things I learned from my mother. My mother, in times of chaos, she shines. She jumps in there, and while everybody is up and confused, she's like her own whirlwind, getting things done. And that for me was a great example.
We need to take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk post-cycling. What has happened after, and how did cycling set you up to achieve all that you have been doing now? So, viewers will be right back after the short break.
Connect with ACTN The Voice on Facebook or Instagram at ACTN The Voice. You're watching ACTN The Voice.
Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back to the Scoreboard on ACTN. Mike, I read somewhere that it was said that you did art in order to assist you during your career as a cyclist. So you weren't depending on sponsors at that time. You were your own sponsor.
Well, fortunately, I did have a couple supportive sponsors. One in particular, Larry Romani, who would have been a former president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. He was actually my coach at one point in time. And he had several young people that he was assisting. And that for me was, again, as far as a role model and a mentor, it was an exceptionally valuable relationship for me over the years. Art was something that also supplemented my costs to do things. I remember when I started in my early teens, Larry used to give math lessons to myself and a few other boys in the club. And one day I took one of my paintings and showed him, and he said, listen, don't come back here for math lessons. Forget that. You're not good at it. Stick to that. You're going to be exceptional.
Okay.
And what he was really saying is that don't stress over this because everybody is cut out for different things.
Yeah.
All right. And I pursued it, much to the enjoyment of my old teacher, Anna Serrao at QRC, because she was the one that was saying, you know, Mr. Phillips, you don't understand what you have here, you know. You're taking it for granted because I used sometimes...
She saw the talent.
Yeah, I used to cut art class sometimes to go and ride. Don't tell anybody. But yeah. And she took me to a Jackie Hinkson exhibition. And that is where the light switched on. And Jackie Hinkson has always been a great, inspiration. Bosco Holder, I had some great opportunities to meet with and chat with Bosco Holder. And one day he told me something, and this is, I think, after I had stopped racing and was organizing events. He said, you know what, Michael, your personality as an athlete is going to dominate your art. That's what people know you for. And you're going to be more and more brilliant as an artist, and people are still going to know you for cycling. And he told me something that recently I picked it up. He said, learn to sing, learn to play an instrument, learn to do something else that further enhances that artistic side and what people see. So the art really came as something that really supported my artwork. I bartered paintings for gas, for my car, for accommodations when I traveled. People would remember me going to the Commonwealth Games, and some of the athletes say, I remember you only playing painting. And that's what I was doing. So I never look back and say, well, you know, of course you would have times that are difficult and you have these pity parties, so to speak. But art for me was a real sustaining factor. So much so that art also became one of the driving factors between me being able to revive cycling. When I started to do these events, over the years of having shows, I had, you know, a sizable, a decent amount of money put away at the unit trust. And then I went straight into doing these things, buying equipment and all these sorts of things for these events. And I remember all of that came from art. And when I got my first sponsorship check from Beacon, I was down to $183 in my account. That's how all in I went. And I thought to myself, I remember my brother saying, Michael, what are you doing? You know, it's like, you're crazy or what?
Yeah, using up your life savings.
And he said, well, what if this doesn't work? And I just said, I'll paint my way out of it. And that was my attitude. And you know, because at a younger age, you're more fearless. You figure you could conquer the world. You just go. And I just had this bullheaded, fixated thing. I could do this. You know, I could pull this off. There's something that's telling me that I can. And I know, you know, the fuel is there. So off of my art, I would tell you, between art and my bike store, Mike's Bikes now and so on, I have been able to invest just over $1 million into the revival and the growth of these things. My key now is, how do I get to the point where I could spend $1 million a year? Because that's my goal. That's my ultimate goal. How do I get to the point that I can generate enough revenue that I can spend $1 million a year on my corporate social responsibility programs? And I'm figuring it out. I'm almost have it figured out. But why I'm saying that and I'm giving that as a figure, I know based on the team that I have, my family, my brothers and so on, my sisters, but what we can do with that, other people would have to follow suit. It's going to set such an example that people are going to say, you know what? Just like the highway cleanup program I had on Sunday, where I close off part of the highway in Diego Martin every Sunday from 6 to 9. Got 100 people to come out. Residents and athletes and so on. People want to be part of something that is positive. And when people see it happen and they may not have thought it was going to happen, just like all of the other events, nobody thought it was going to happen. Nobody thought it would be, you could pull it off. When it happens, then it snowballs. So you have to go through the growing pains. You have to take the licks. You have to take the broken bones. You have to take the bruises, literally and figuratively, to be able to achieve what you want to achieve.
Now, you also, as a businessman now, you have your Mike's Bike Store. You also went into motivational speaking, right? Tell me a bit about those two aspects.
So the motivational speaking is something, before I went to QRC, I went to Mukurapo Junior Secondary School, which for most children, when they get that result and they have to go to junior secondary school, they're like, you know, it's devastating. You know, it's the end of the world. And that was probably the greatest thing that would have happened for me. Because it gave me a totally different perspective in terms of branding, what it was like to wear a QRC shirt and a junior secondary shirt, and how people reacted to you. That was really, really a key moment in understanding what people's positions may be. Guardian newspaper did a program called Guardian Making a Difference program, where we toured with schools with Arthur Bolden, Brian Lara, Wendy Fitzwilliam, George Bovell. And that gave me the opportunity to speak to thousands of students. I really appreciate it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So starting at Mukurapo Junior Secondary School and going back to that school first and working from there, it just gave me that level of comfort. Of course, it developed the skill where I can go in front of a crowd of people or MC a program, and it's just another skill set. By giving, you actually develop yourself, and you have in return. So Mike's Bikes has been that aspect of it. The store was always there on Arpita Avenue. My Uncle Patrick, who has been a great support for my business as well as my other families. I have a prime location on Arpita Avenue that I could say my family and myself feel very proud about, because whereas the rest of it is entertainment and alcohol and whatnot, we are sport and providing something to help extend people's lives and to get them more healthy and so on. So the store really came as a support in being able to do things and initiate the highway program in Diego Martin, the Keep Moving Family and Fitness program. I would have to say, but with the COVID, the store is struggling. We are not getting stock, we're not getting inventory because there's higher demand and now there's diminished supply. So we're going through a really rough period. So when I sit here talking to you, it's not because everything is hunky-dory and you're looking at it and you're looking at my artwork and what he has it going on. No. Every single day is a struggle. And particularly with the store, day by day, what am I going to do today? Can I open for Christmas? Am I going to have bikes for Christmas? Maybe not. What am I going to do? Am I going to sit and do a series of small paintings and have that in my store for Christmas? So it's really feeling every bit of uncertainty that everybody else out there may be feeling in whichever way that they are feeling that.
But then you go out to schools and motivate students.
All right.
Now, how are you motivating yourself now? Go through this period here.
Part of that, when I feel probably at my lowest, I'll let you in on a little secret. I find if I call somebody else up and try to help them, I feel a bit of self-worth as far as that's concerned. And I have certain people that, would look out for me and I would look out for them. And, by extension, the community would. And then, some days somebody would just randomly drop into so, hey, I just passed to see how you're going. And that's that sense of community. How I start my day, when I have my most productive days. Now, a cell phone is something that can be used just like a diet, and a diet for your brain. So in your cell phone, you can access blue food, or you can access candy and sugar, right? Which one gives you the higher dopamine effect? The sugar, really, but you should be eating the blue food, all right? So I would start my day, when I have a great day, with motivational videos. Just type in, look for motivational videos. And there may be 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute videos there that give you it's set and choreographed in a way to get you fired up, as opposed to something else that is just filler. And what you try to do is you choose your friends. Choose the people that are examples to you. And people that open up and tell you, boy, I made a mistake here. Boy, I really, I messed up here. This is what you should do. Because you really don't want to be reinventing the wheel, and you really don't want to go down roads that have a dead end that you may be able to avoid by having these relationships. So choosing your friends properly, that's one of the things for me with cycling. Why I felt so strongly about making sure that this sport didn't die is because I had so many of my friends that were much older than I was. I came into a club as a teenager, a young teenager, and all of the people I associated with were in their mid-20s and 30s and 40s, right? And I had people that were in the masters categories that, Mike, look, I bring a chain for you. Mike, look, a tire. Captain Ralph Thompson and so on, guys like that. That those little things. If you win that race, Mike Chan, another BB captain. At this point, these people just used to, these little things. And it's like it's almost like somebody sent them to do it. And what I realized that those gifts was something that you need to pass on. So I know when I go certain places, earlier this year, I went to a carnival function and I was speaking with Marshall Montano. We were standing up there chatting, and a young lady walked up and said, "Excuse me, Marshall, I just need to chat with Michael here. So I want you to know something. I was at such and such school, and he came to this school when I was, and she repeated what I said. And I wanted you to know I would never forget it. And thank you very much." And I was like, wow. And so happened that approach was made on a week when I was having a really crappy week. What was I going to do? Is what I am doing of any worth? And I think those messages come to you in the most, random of moments.
So actually your motivational speeches sometimes come back to assist you.
It does. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. So, I firmly believe that once you give with the right motive, you are going to be able to set in motion something that expands and helps people, and then eventually comes back to help you, because that energy needs you involved. So something comes back to you to keep you going. And not only that, is extremely satisfying. Somebody asked me the other day, "Mike, why you keep this program going? You don't have any sponsors or whatever it is." And so to keep the program in Diego Martin going since things were reopened.
That's the one every Sunday.
Every Sunday, yeah. Right? You ask me, why you don't shut it down? And say, listen, you don't have some people that buy a boat and they go down the islands and they invite people and they have drinks and that sort of stuff. I said, this is my down the islands. When I get up on a Sunday morning and I see hundreds of people come out and we teach kids how to ride, and I see people in their 70s and their 80s, and we have had kids that have come there from being pushed in a stroller to getting on to the podium in the junior triathlon championships, Caribbean championships. That is extremely gratifying. So for me, I can't do anything else. It's an obsession, really, from a standpoint of what else can I do? What else can this body give? What else is in here? What else is going to be sparked? And how can I now teach somebody else that and say, hey, you can do it? And do that in a way. One of the things that I fear is when people look at me, they think, okay, I'm talking about these things and it's almost like if I'm beamed down. And when I was talking about broken bones, I have broken my leg, my ribs, my collarbone, fractured my cheekbone, foot. All that is part of it. You have to, what defines you is being able to get up from taking a hit. Whether or not you're going to lie down there or you're going to get back up and figure out how you're going to go about it. One of the things that I learned that I'd like people to know, every time you fail, there's nothing you can achieve and be successful at without obsessive repetition. And when you fail, if you prescribe or assign a reason to your failure that makes you feel most comfortable, more than likely you're not going to be a success at it. Because you'd say, okay, it's because this, is because somebody else father gave them this or whatever it is, as opposed to, okay, did I spend enough hours doing what it is I should be doing to be good at it? Am I going to take personal responsibility when I fail, when I let somebody down? How am I going to deal with it when somebody lets me down? All of those things are really conversations that one has to have with themselves and take that time and that space. I do that when I go riding. I have time to mill those things over in my mind.
It is very interesting sitting down talking to you because, you know, there's so much of information that you are giving out here that can assist people because especially when in this time with the COVID, a lot of us, you know, not only the sportsmen and women, but a lot of individuals, we are finding it very hard to cope with being locked down and not doing the things that we would like to do, right? We got to take a break. When I come back, I want to talk to you a bit about well, viewers, all the titles that I gave to Mike at the beginning of the show, there is one that we didn't talk about yet. The ending of the program, you will see that one. When I come back, I want to talk about cycling at present and what sort of advice that you will give to sportsmen and women right now, especially in this period where there is nothing happening, because you can easily be sidetracked with a number of different things. And I also want to talk to you about that part of your that not a career that you're going into. You know, what was the purpose behind it? Yeah. So we'll chat on that. Viewers will be right back after the short break. Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back to Scoreboard here. And for those of you who have been viewing the program and looking at this beautiful painting behind me, this is one of Michael Phillips' pieces, many pieces. And if you go to any one of his exhibitions or even on his Facebook page, you will see it's amazing. It's amazing. And you would have seen a couple of the shots coming up on our screen. Mike, we're in a period here with this COVID lockdown that people are frustrated. You know, some cannot handle it for some whatever reason. They being locked down. Sportsmen and women cannot, there's no sport going on. You know, you can't train properly. You know, being in a position where you are, what advice will you give, you know, especially with the young sportsmen? Because there are so many things that we can easily be sidetracked with now. Because I can't ride my bike, let me find something else to do, which could be the negative side.
Correct.
How do you motivate somebody? How do you keep this young person's mind fixed on whatever sport or whatever good thing that you're doing?
That's a very good question because, you know, I have not been impervious to that scenario with regards to feeling down, feeling depressed, feeling contained. My promotions business, that side of it, all the events that I do, that's been shut down. And not only that, so I am not putting on races. I think we have to get as creative as possible to still pay attention, athletes in particular, and everybody should. Your diet and being physically active in whichever way that you can. There's enough space now to go out and do something that you may have considered to be cross-training, and consider this to be an extended period of cross-training or base training. Find different ways of getting your resistance in. You can't go to the gym, fill some buckets. You know, do anything. Look at how Rocky used to train for that movie with rocks and all that. So just get creative. You are the one that are going to have to do it. Nobody else can take your body to the gym for you or take your body to exercise. I can't pay anybody to paint for me. There's certain things that only you are going to be able to do. Things are going to turn around. And the reason for that is if you look at cases now and how we look at things in a more pragmatic manner now, if we had the amount of cases that we've had a few weeks ago in the beginning of March, people's outlook and attitude in March would have been far different than it was, even though there were lower cases. There were lower cases where there was a higher level of panic, right? So those adjustments are going to come because Mosquitoes take out 750,000 people worldwide every year. Nobody runs out of a room screaming when they see a mosquito. All right. So there's going to be that level of adjustment in addition to the therapeutics that are going to come online. Prepare yourself that you're not as far back as if it is that you were doing nothing or doing the wrong things. There's a perfect opportunity to keep physically active and learn new things. As I said, there are windows in terms of picking up your phone and looking for things that would help motivate you and educate you. Those motivational videos are the ones that I look at, a lot of them have a great component with imagery as far as sport is concerned.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing that you would need to do is sharpen your interview skills. Being able to phrase, when I went to ride, all of my interviews were already filed in my brain because I thought of every possible question that a reporter can ask me, and therefore it was just a matter of press play. And I did that while I was on my bicycle. So finding new ways of having preparation. When I paint, I'm doing two things at the same time. So I might be painting and I might be thinking of a concept of something, and I might be taking a voice note of an email to be sent or whatever it is, and you start to learn to multitask in that way. Look for inspiration wherever it is you can find it. Anytime you have anybody that is telling you and constantly talking about the disasters, listen less to them. That's the reality, because you're going to get sucked down that rabbit hole, which you don't want to be. You need to find whichever way you can to do something positive. I have done probably my best artwork during this COVID period. There are other things that I picked up that I took this opportunity to say, well, what do I have time in my hands to do? Let me find something new. Let me develop that skill further. Let me put hours into it.
Now, Mike Phillip, the cyclist, businessman, motivational speaker, and the one that you, the viewers, will now be hearing about is Mike Phillip, the singer-composer. Yes? And he made his debut on ACTN today. And at the end of the program, you're going to hear one of his renditions. How did this come into play?
That was actually a bit of a fun surprise. So when I was doing my paintings recently, I started doing time-lapse videos and putting it to music. And one of the videos that I did, I was playing the fool in it with a paintbrush, like lip syncing in between and so on, just to give some, break the monotony, so to speak. And people kept asking me if I was the one I was singing, because it was a cover song that I was doing. And I said, no. And people just kept saying, well, that's the next thing you need to do now. Let's see if you can do that. And I tried. And at first, nothing was coming out because I didn't understand that music were in different octaves or semitones and so on. And then my mother, I remember, used to play a lot of Neil Diamond when I was a child. And I said, well, let me try one of those songs. And then I realized, wait, I can sing this. How come can I sing this and I can't sing this other one? And you go through that education process. And then from there, I went and luckily through cycling and just being about, I had some really good friends that or people that were in the music industry. So like a Joey Ningwai, Nigel Rojas, Wendy Shepherd, I've done a few voice classes with her to sharpen things up. Trisha Lee Kelshall has been one of the other people that have been, motivating me. Say, Michael, you keep going, try it, I live next door to Robin Imamshah, who has been involved in
music for
a long time.
Yeah. That was with Chandelier, one of those bands.
Yeah, it's the Taxi. Yes, yeah, right. Yeah. So I've been having fun with it. And I thought, why not? Because if I can explain to people that it's a process, it requires hours. You will develop calluses on your fingers from playing a guitar, which I bought a guitar last month and started practicing for the first time. September 7th, I bought my guitar at Simon's. And I thought, okay, I want to write music, but I have to learn how to put it down. And I just, again, jumped in and I'll figure it out. I'll find a way. And there are great pointers on YouTube. And you'll get little hints here and there, and you ask questions. One of the greatest tools that you have is the ability to ask a question and go up and, and a lot of people are willing to help and pass on what they know. So the types of music that I've done, I've been trying different things. So one of the songs, my first song that I wrote was actually from a motivational perspective, and it was really an inflection of some of my life experiences and people or things that I would have seen people experience.
And that's what you're going to be using now when you go to the schools to.
Yes, that's one of the things. So as I go along, I'm getting better. I'm being able. Just about 3 weeks ago, I started playing the guitar. So I learned to play the chords for the song by trial and error, feeling and feeling and feeling until I got it, remembering where I put my fingers, and. So it just started to happen, and then to be able to hum to the chords before I could sing it. So it's learning. It's like learning to ride a bike. You remember that first thing? You're wobbling all over the place and it's shaky, right? And the principles are very similar as far as how you break things down for training. So you do loops. So you do a shorter interval before you do the entire thing. Some people who go out and run a marathon every day, they do. Different types of break it down into more bite-sized things. So that's how it's been, and I'm enjoying it. I don't know where I'm going to go with it. I've written 3 songs so far, and I really am enjoying it, and I hope that it gives somebody out there say, well, if he could do it, let me try that.
I could do it too.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure, right? I still feel there is so much more that we can still discuss, but time runs so fast when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And I know I want to leave the viewers with the opportunity to see you at something that I think they're going to be amazed with, because it's the first time they've actually seen it. And thank you for sharing this opportunity here with us. And I know I want to be chatting with you again, right? Because I think there is a lot more that we haven't really, had the opportunity or the time to discuss. So again,
no problem.
I want to thank you very much. And viewers, as I said, we are going to be leaving you now with Michael Phillips, the composer and the singer. If you missed any part of this program, there's a repeat tomorrow at 1 p.m. And also there's a repeat on Saturday at 2 p.m. So viewers, we thank you again. Enjoy the rendition by Mike Phillips. And who knows, just as how he has that art exhibition, we might be seeing Michael Phillips in concert. So enjoy the rest of the week. Be safe. Follow all the protocols. And I'll see you next week, Tuesday.
Step, it starts by you dreaming, and the focus that's set to dare to be brave, the conviction of heart, and to always find meaning in the course that you chart. I know it's not easy when you reach for the stars, and I know when I get there, I can show you my scars, because believing is seeing through an ironclad wheel. It's all up to me now, my time to fulfill. Today is the day, I'm gonna find my way, gonna take back every heartache that life made me pay. Today is the day, I push my fears aside, and if I should fall, it's just part of the ride. I've gotta find my way, 'cause today is the day. Of time, till we know love is blind. It hurts when it leaves you, there's no care for your pride. And when one door closes, some others open wide, but you never stop until you reach the other side. My grandma once told me, if the wrong tears run dry, but the day you stop trying is the day that you die. Today is the day, I'm gonna find my way, gonna take back every heartache that love made me pay. Today is the day, I push my fears aside, and if love should leave, it's just part of the ride. Every dog has his day, so the old folks say, better clear my way. take makes me stronger. Back to fight another day is my way. And when breath is with me no longer, my song will forever stay. Yeah. Today is the day I'm gonna find my way. Gonna take back every heartache that life made me pay. Gonna sing all my worries away. Back to fight another day is my way. Gonna paint blue skies out of rainy gray. And today is my day.